Hello, Tech fans, and welcome into episode 122 of the Tech Sideline Podcast, originating from TSL's high-tech studios in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. We're so glad you could join us today on this Monday morning, March the 2nd. We've got a lot to get to today, starting off by talking about an ACC championship this weekend in Blacksburg. We'll talk about Virginia Tech's indoor track and field team, the women bringing home the title. The men did very well as well. Plus, we'll talk about Virginia Tech men's basketball. Tough week for the Hokies, losing to UVA at the buzzer, as well as losing to Louisville on Sunday. Plus, we'll do a whip round of other winter and spring sports, and at the end, we'll get to your questions. It's all live on the Tech Sideline Podcast, brought to you by the Fisher Law Firm, and it all gets started right now. And with that, we welcome you into the Tech Sideline Podcast on this Monday morning, recording on March the 2nd. We're glad you're with us. We've got the best producer in the land behind the scenes taking your questions right now on Facebook Live. He is Malcolm Stewart. On the podcast set, we've got our managing editor, Chris Coleman, our founder and general manager, Will Stewart, and I'm your podcast host, Evan Hughes. Gentlemen, good morning and happy March to all of you. It is officially March Madness.
Yay, we made it through winter. Not through winter, through
January. No, we'll have a blizzard next week. Watch.
There was snow in Blacksburg this week.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that starting yesterday, the weather took a turn for the better because it was brutal there for a few days.
It's gearing up for one of those big March 15th snowstorms.
Yeah, everybody thinks you're through winter, and everybody's excited for the spring, and then boom, nails you.
The snow actually came in unexpectedly kind of Friday night and Saturday morning, postponed the baseball game. Doubleheader yesterday.
Yeah, so that's why my guide says that it was recording Bryant at Virginia Tech on the ACC network, but it was actually recording some of the Traditions shows. That game was supposed to be on the ACC network.
The Saturday game was supposed to be on the network.
Yep.
But all three were on the network extra instead. So good weekend for Tech baseball. We'll talk about that in a little bit later. They took the series sweep from the Bryant Bulldogs. Actually, a pretty good team out of the NEC. So we got a lot to get to on the podcast today. We're excited to break it all down here on the Tech Sideline Podcast. But as we now begin every podcast with, what's going on at Tech Sideline right now? What do we have on the website? What great content can our subscribers and our new subscribers
You asked that? I have no idea.
That's all right. I got some.
Will was reminding me to bring it up at the beginning.
Yeah, so I was thinking about, last week we were talking about how Unhinged got so many comments. So I'm going to write an article this week that is the top 10 commented articles in Tech Sideline history. Now, we switched to the WordPress content delivery system in early 2012. So that's 8 years worth of articles. It doesn't go back, further than that. We didn't have comments on articles before then. But the top 10 have all been commented on like 120 times plus. So I'm going to review all those and kind of talk about them. And mostly it's subject matter that people were not happy about. Of course, people tend to comment more when they are not happy. So that's coming up sometime this week. I don't know when I'll get to it, but I think that sounds fun, and I'll do that this week.
How has your scouting series been, Chris? I know you've been working very hard on that.
It's slow. It's not a very big class, so I'm spacing it out a lot. Yeah. I think I'm 5 players into it, and forgot how many we signed, so I guess I got about 10 or 11
15?
left.
I think it was 15.
Sounds about right.
Something like that.
Of course you do. Your Fisher Law Firm Friday Q&A. This was titled Future Virginia Tech Basketball Expectations. If you haven't read it yet, what can you give a little taste to our viewers that have not read it?
I compared, since Virginia Tech is running a system offense right now, I think the best comparison for program building is actually UVA, because they installed a system that their players were not used to running, and it takes time to implement a structured system. And so I think we should probably, rather than comparing Mike Young to Buzz Williams or anybody like
Seth
that,
Greenberg.
or Seth Greenberg, or any past Virginia Tech coach, we should probably look up the road to Charlottesville and use that as our base. Tony Bennett went 15-16 his first year and 16-15 his second year. Didn't make the NCAA tournament until his third year, and then his fourth year they were back in the NIT. So won NCAA tournament in his first 4 years, and he's an elite coach, national coach of the year. Right.
So it was probably the 5th year where, if I remember that season correctly, they got blown out at Tennessee
by like 30 or 40.
35 points or something like that. And the fans were freaking out. And then they just started winning and winning and winning. And that was the year they won, I think, the ACC regular season championship. And they may have even won the ACC tournament that year. Mm-hmm. But it finally just took off for him early in his 5th year.
Yeah. So
hang in there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it takes a while to implement a system. I know everybody wants overnight success these days. My personal opinion is I don't know that next year will be a lot different than this year.
Yeah.
Just for the simple fact that the rest of the ACC is going to be better. I mean, this is a bad conference this year.
Yeah, Tech can be better, and it won't reflect in the record.
Yeah. So, take the longer term view, because when you're implementing a system, you don't want to take shortcuts. You don't want to go out and take short term transfers like Zach Lede and Seth Allen, because transfers they're not. It takes multiple years to pick up a system. You go out and bring in transfers and especially like a graduate transfer who's eligible immediately, they're not going to be able to learn the system in time. So this is something that's going to be handled with long-term views in mind as far as how Mike Young recruits and everything like that. So,
and one of the announcers in last night's Louisville game was talking about having had a conversation with Mike Young, and the announcer said, I don't remember what the question was, and Mike Young reiterated, he said, we need to get bigger. Oh, the question was, what do you need to advance the program? And he told the ACC Network announcer, and this wasn't on the air, this is a before the game conversation. He said, we need to get bigger. We need more bigger guys. We're too small. So there is a long, glorious history of not being able to recruit big men to Virginia Tech, and that goes way back to when I was in school in the 80s. They had some guys in the late 70s, early 80s that were really good, Wayne Robinson and Dale Solomon.
Ricky Stokes had some big guys. Terry Taylor, Carlton Carter, who could really shoot. Remember him? Damari Tompkins.
In the classic mode way back then, everybody had a 7-footer.
Right.
Now, they don't spend much time in college these days, if at all.
Unless they go to Florida State.
But and even back then, they all go to Florida State, basically. Even back then, Wayne Robinson, as good as he was, I think was somewhere between 6'9" and 6'10". I'm not sure. So I don't remember Tech ever having a 7-footer who was worth a whole lot. They had Roy Brow. Roy Brow was like 7'1", and Roy was a shot blocking machine, but that was about all he could do. So anyway, if Mike Young is successful recruiting, and the definition of big guys these days is different. Like Kerry Blackshear's what, 6'9"?
6'10". He's 6'10".
Okay, well, I'll take a 6'9", 6'10" guy. There just aren't 7-footers floating around, but that's a big guy. And Mike's already got Aluma's listed at 6'9", I think, and if he can add another 6'9", 6'10" guy in there, I think he'll get closer to where he wants to be. He wasn't clear how many big guys he needed. He just said they need to get bigger.
And we can talk a lot more about this as we dive into talking about the past week for Virginia Tech men's basketball. Heartbreaker against UVA on Wednesday, which we'll talk about. Yes. And then yesterday on Sunday, a 68-52 loss to the 11th-ranked Louisville Cardinals. But we begin episode 122 of the Tech Sideline Podcast talking about an ACC championship. On Saturday, Virginia Tech's women's track and field team claimed the first ACC indoor title since 2008. They won it with 105.5 points, easily besting second place Miami, which finished with 73 points. Big deal.
And if you drill down a little further, they went into Saturday in 5th place, right, with 25 points, and they scored 80 points on Saturday. The article said, quote, exploded, unquote. That's quite a few points.
That's a big deal. Anytime there's an ACC championship.
Yeah, no doubt.
Cue the Bill Brill jokes.
The track program, whether indoor or outdoor, whether men's or women's, they've brought in plenty of those. Since Tech joined the ACC, I would say, outside of maybe wrestling, it has been Virginia Tech's most consistent program.
Evan's got the numbers there about track and field ACC championships. It was... The men have won 9 ACC championships, indoor and outdoor, and the women have won 6. Mm-hmm. So that's a combined 15 ACC championships from those two programs.
Yeah,
and they have Dave don't want to mispronounce his
Chinelli.
name. Chinelli. Dave Chinelli has been in Blacksburg since 2001, going all the way back before they joined the ACC. He's the director of track and field and cross country. So talk about consistency over almost a 20-year span.
Yeah, I'll admit I'm not up to speed on my Dave Chinelli history, but I remember at one point Russ Whitenack was the track coach here at Tech. And Jim Weaver reassigned Russ, who I believe is still with Virginia Tech.
I believe reassigned him to the Monogram Club.
To the Monogram Club, yeah. And Jim did what, and again, this is me pulling from the deepest recesses of my memory, which isn't that great. I think he studied what some of the better programs around the country were doing, and they had like individual directors for the men's and women's teams. Whatever they were up to, Jim modeled Tech's track and field and cross country programs on that model, and it's been pretty wildly successful.
So again, the women's win the championship. The men took second.
Nice.
And they also on Saturday pick up 2 Commonwealth Clash points. So
Still pretty far behind.
Virginia now leads 6.5 to 5.5.
It's 3.5, I think.
This is according to the press release on HokieSports.com.
Okay, there you go.
So I will, but let's see. It says Hokie secured both points by virtue of finishing ahead of the Cavaliers on both the men's and the women's sides. UVA currently holds the overall lead with a score of 6.5 to 5.5.
It was really a killer when women's basketball got upset by UVA, who only has like 11 or 12 wins this year.
Yeah, that's
but because when you get swept in men's basketball, and when you lose in football for the first time in 16 years, you need something to come back around and make up for it, right?
Yeah,
and we are clearly better than them in women's basketball, but yet we only got a split with the Commonwealth Clash points.
Yeah, and I think each game in basketball is worth half a point.
Yeah,
so that's a turnaround of a point.
Right. So you're talking about a 6-6 tie if that game goes in the other direction.
So congratulations to the women, but the key question is, how did Cole Beck do? So you'll have to.
He had a lot of good times. I know that. I saw they were. He got tweeted out quite a bit by the track Twitter account.
Yeah,
I saw. Yeah.
I want to say at one point I saw he finished 5th in one event. I mean, I was looking around, and so I will try and pull that up and see.
But at some point when one of us is monologuing, you can pull it up and look at it.
So again, ACC championship this weekend, and speaking of the Commonwealth Clash, think that it'll be tied up this weekend. Virginia Tech goes to Virginia in softball, and if you take the series, you get the full point. So that's the only time they play all year. So I'm not looking too far ahead, but I think Virginia Tech can take 2 of 3 from Virginia.
I think that's a fair claim.
So that would tie it up at 6.5.
That is the most likely outcome. Yeah. Yes.
That's been a very consistent sport from taking points from UVA over the last couple of years.
So, what programs have won ACC championships? Clearly, the football program has. Softball has.
Softball won it in 2007 and 2008, I believe.
Wrestling has.
Men's and women's track and field. I think there's probably a cross-country championship lurking in there somewhere.
I think so, yeah.
Maybe a swimming and diving, potentially?
I don't think we've had one for swimming and diving. That. I think we've been good at swimming and diving, but there's a couple of really good programs in the ACC.
Yeah, not in soccer. Soccer's brutal.
It's brutal. You can finish in last place and be a really good team.
That's right.
I mean, this year the women's soccer program didn't qualify for the ACC tournament, but they still secured a home first-round NCAA tournament game against Xavier. So, yeah, no.
Maybe the ACC needs to reevaluate how they do their tournament. If they've got teams making the NCAA tournament and
hosting games,
but they're not making the ACC tournament.
Listen, in soccer, you win the ACC tournament, that might be harder than winning the NCAA tournament.
Yeah,
in terms of the competition you're playing every single round.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Now, baseball did get really close to winning an ACC championship.
Yeah, they
really
lost that
close
ACC championship game
to Florida State.
It was North Carolina.
It was North Carolina.
I thought they beat Florida State.
They did. They beat Florida State.
Yeah, really close.
That was back in 2013, I believe, right?
Yeah, they had so many good players on that team. Chad Pender, I believe, was Pender on that? Yeah, Pender was on that.
Pender was on that team.
And then the guy for the Cubs, it starts with a Z.
Yeah, he was on there. There was a lot of talent on that team. They actually had pitching depth back then. Like, remember Eddie Campbell was like their 4th starter, their emergency starter.
Yeah, he was pretty darn good.
And I thought he was like the most talented pitcher on that team.
Yeah.
So they had a lot of good pitching depth back then.
When here's what's to come on the podcast today, we will talk baseball, and we'll talk about how good the pitching staff was this weekend against Bryant. So, again, we transition now from talking about the ACC championship for women's indoor track and field to talking about men's basketball. We touched on it a little bit, talking about Chris's Friday Q&A. Let's talk about the last week that the Hokies went through. Let's start with UVA, because that was a game that was really the tale of two different halves. Virginia Tech scored the fewest amount of points in a half since joining the ACC. They were down 26-11 at halftime. Chris, how were the Hokies able to come back into that game, and how tough of a loss was that with the last-second three from Kihei Clark?
At this point, I'm kind of numb to close losses. I mean, I've been watching Virginia Tech basketball since I was a kid. And I've been covering the team personally since we got a press pass back in 2012. So I've seen so many close losses that, they're all kind of numb to me at this point. But as far as how they came back, there was two things. First of all, they were more aggressive in the second half. They got downhill faster. They made it to their cutting points faster. I thought that enabled them to attack downhill and get to the basket a little more. But the main thing is they started making shots. It's not like they didn't have any good looks in the first half. They had a ton of open looks in the first half, and they just missed all of them. What were they, 1 of 13 in the first half?
1 of 13, yeah.
From three-point range.
Yeah, and then they just started hitting.
And I think there was only, out of those 12 misses, I think there was maybe only like 2 of them where I didn't like the shot.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought they were all good shots. So I think it's as simple as that. That's what got them back in the game.
I think if they just had more consistently made their shots, you'd be talking about a win over UVA today, not a loss. Yeah.
You were assuming you were at the UVA game, Will.
I was, yep.
When Radford scored that bucket to tie it, did you feel like that was going to happen? Take me through your thoughts of the last 30 seconds of that game.
Honestly, at this point in the season, I get a bad feeling. I got a bad feeling when they were up, when Virginia Tech was up 3 with the ball with 3 minutes left to go, and Nolly got called for a charge, right?
He got called for a charge. Then UVA scored to cut it to 1, and then Tech took back-to-back bad shots in a row.
Yeah,
or too early in the shot clock. Shots that we should not have been taking at that point.
So there was a string of like 4 bad offensive possessions. Next thing you know, you're losing the basketball game.
Yeah.
And that's been the pattern. And, I don't have a good enough memory to regurgitate stuff, but, this is a team that they led Miami by 4 points late in, I think, regulation and overtime. Maybe they led Miami multiple times late in the game and could not finish them.
Right.
And so I'm at the point where it ain't over till it's over, till I see them actually finish the other team off, because they're struggling to do that. And so for me, I got the bad feeling when they did not score with that 3-point lead with 3 minutes left to go. They didn't extend the lead.
One thing that's a common theme from this past week of Virginia Tech men's basketball was the starting 5. And if you go back and listen to Mike Young's post-game comments after the UVA game on Wednesday, he was saying that basically the starting 5 doesn't matter as much to him as much as who's on the 5 on the floor at the end of the game.
Well, I asked him that question, and my question was, were there any reasons for a different starting lineup? And that's the answer he gave. Basically, he didn't answer the question. I don't really blame him. I think he's just trying to maybe look for a different combination. Maybe he's trying to light a fire under Nolly.
And specifically, he did not start Nolly and Horn. He started Ogiaco
and Isaiah Wilkins.
Starting 5.
And I think he's trying to empower Ogiaco a little bit to speed up his development.
So to help me with my memory here, Mike had talked about running that half court alley-oop play for the post player and how other teams do it, and he wanted to start doing that with Ogiaco.
Yeah,
they tried it against UVA. Yeah. Was it UVA?
Maybe, I don't remember.
I know we've seen it. It didn't quite work.
Yeah. Where were we? Oh, the starting lineup. It's odd. You decide to not start Nolly, but they're starting him for the second half. I mean, when the second half started on both those games, Mike Young went with his traditional starting 5, the one he's been using for most games throughout the course of the year. To me, I don't care whether Nolly starts. The issue with Nolly is he's still playing 25 or 30 minutes a game, and he shouldn't be playing that much, in my opinion. He's not. I've defended him because I say we need him in there because he's 6'7" and he's a good rebounder. But then when he goes out against Louisville and only has one rebound in 25 minutes, that's when it becomes a 5-on-4 basketball game.
And watching the live stats, the sidearm live stats, one of the columns in the player statistics is it's not defined. It's an efficiency column. And yesterday, I'm trying to remember against Louisville, Cone was probably pretty high up there in efficiency. Radford, of course,
Right.
He's like running a 12 to a 15. Whatever this number means, Tech's top guys are typically plus 12, plus 15, and Nolly was minus 3 for most of the game that he was in there, and he was the only. Wilkins was also in the minus. I'm not sure exactly why.
I'm surprised it was that high. He was 2 of 9 from the field, only have 1 rebound,
5 turnovers.
5 turnovers.
Yeah. I don't know how low that number goes.
It's just we're wasting a lot of possessions with him out there, whether he's either turning it over or missing shots.
And I thought they were very competitive with Louisville in the first half, and then it started to turn in the second half. And I didn't go back and watch it and catalog all this, but it seemed to be Nolly turning it over and taking bad shots in the first 5 minutes of the second half, and that's when the game turned in the wrong direction.
Yeah. So I don't know what. I don't know enough about basketball from an X's and O's or a technique standpoint. I know he's got a weird shooting motion. He doesn't really jump when he takes his jump shots. You'd have to go back and watch what he was doing in November and December to see if anything's changed in his technique. Maybe it's a simple technique issue. I do know he's not – now that we have 27 games or whatever to review – we have almost the full body of work. And Laguna Beach Hokie said this on the board. He's not very athletic. He can't really beat guys off the dribble.
His first step is not fast.
It's not fast. And he had a bigger guy guarding him yesterday too, and he still couldn't beat him off the dribble. His first step is slow. So he's got I don't know. He better not declare for the NBA draft.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't know how much of this is Mike Young empowering him and how much of this is him empowering himself, but he just doesn't seem like he's playing within the system sometimes.
Right.
So if one of your 5 players isn't playing within the system, then the system is destroyed. There's no point in having the system. You need all 5 guys on the court bought into the system to have it work.
Yeah, and I've defended him as well because he's had bad shooting games where he's had 4 or 5 assists and 7, 8, 9 rebounds.
Exactly.
And we didn't see any of that against Louisville.
Yeah, right.
That was rough.
Yeah, everything's for a while. It was just his shooting trending down, and 1 out of every 3 games he'd have a bad turnover game. But it seems like now that almost everything is trending down.
Yeah,
I was trying to find this number. I actually watched the game at McAdoo's yesterday, and somebody was telling me, I don't know who, that there is one rating that has him being selected in the second round of the 2020 NBA draft.
Yeah, but how out of date is that?
Good point. Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at NBA Draft.net, I think maybe their mock draft had him in the second round, but I don't know about their composite mock draft that takes into account 70 or 80 different mock drafts around. But I don't know who would draft him. Right? I mean, he's a redshirt freshman who has made
he has some holes in his game, needs to improve.
Lots of holes in his game, right? Yeah, and there is a bare minimum athleticism required for the NBA.
Yeah,
and I don't see it that out of him.
Let's keep breaking down this Louisville game as we transition. 68-52, the final score yesterday on Sunday at the KFC Yum Center. However, it was tied at 27 in the first half. I want to start there because that was a positive first half, it seemed like, for Tech, despite the 7 first-half turnovers. And Naheem Aline jumped out to a quick start, it felt like, behind
he did. And some of those turnovers in the first half didn't bother me. I mean, the 2 or 3 of them were charging calls. And those can go either way. And those are your guys just playing hard and everything like that. You don't like live ball turnovers and stepping out of bounds and throwing the ball to the other team and things like that. But when your guys, they get a turnover for charging, I'm not going to get upset about that. But on the whole, I thought Tech They did a good job in the first half. Neither team could get the lid off the basket in the first 6 minutes of the game. Mm-hmm. So I think Virginia Tech scored their first basket, I think at the 14-13 mark.
Something like that.
And that tied the game at 2.
Yeah, and then Louisville hit a 3, and then they went to the first TV timeout with like 14:02 to go in the first half.
It was like 5-2. It was crazy. So I thought Tech played pretty well. As well as they're going to play against a top 10 team at this point in the season, probably.
So, since Louisville entered the ACC, the Virginia Tech's men and women do not have a victory against.
I've never seen Virginia Tech beat Louisville in any sport
that
I've watched. I mean, I know we've beaten them in some other sports, some Olympic sports and things like that.
Lacrosse beat them this weekend in Louisville,
right? Well, it was Virginia Tech at Louisville weekend. So
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at
you
least
want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, at least lacrosse came through. But the ACC in one day, I guess to make Louisville happy, sends the women's team and the men's team out to Louisville on the same day.
Yeah, the women played at noon, right,
Yeah.
at the Yum Center, and then the men played at 6 o'clock.
And those aren't winnable games for Virginia Tech this year.
Yeah.
And then next year you're at Louisville in football. Louisville will not come to Virginia Tech in football until at least 2025.
Right. Yes, 2026 probably is when they'll schedule it.
Yes.
I remember. Yeah, I remember when Louisville came into the ACC. I remember making up the future schedules on Tech's, the future football schedules on Tech Sideline, and Louisville's only on there once, and that's Tech traveling to Louisville. And these schedules go way out.
Yeah. So thanks for all the road trips and double headers against teams that overmatch us right now, ACC. Yeah. But at least I got to watch.
But at least they run clean programs.
Will went there. Again, starting 5 yesterday was the same from UVA. It was Aline, Radford, Beatty, Ogiaco, and Wilkins. Will, another positive, trying to take some positive out of that loss. Jalen Cone, 15 points in 27 minutes.
Yeah, so Cone and Aline were 9 of 15 from three-point range, and the rest of the team was, I believe, 1 of 15. I think Tech
it was 9 of 17 and 1 of 13.
PJ Horn was 1 of 7 from 3.
Right.
Nolly was
0-4.
Right.
Yeah, so, it was nice to see Aline have a good shooting game. And Cone was just working his butt off.
He's got when I say jump shot, he
has a jump shot.
He has a jump shot. I would describe Nolly's shot as like a flick shot. He doesn't jump at all. He just.
I would love to see a comparison of the release points of those two guys.
It's probably the same height.
Cone might be
even
higher.
Yeah, probably so.
But they were using him to run some Louisville guys ragged, and I put on Twitter that one of my goals for yesterday was to see Cone outscore Ryan McMahon. Ryan McMahon is a guy I will not miss at all.
No, not at all. And he was so nice to Virginia Tech in his post-game interview.
Was he really?
Oh, my gosh.
I couldn't watch it. I turned it off.
He was like, well, Virginia Tech's such a good team, really competitive program. They played so hard. They played defense at a high level.
Ryan McMahon is that guy. I hate him when he plays for the other team, but I'd love to have him play for Virginia Tech. That's
how I feel about Tony Bennett, if I'm being totally honest. Not that I want to hear, but I just really like him as a person. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
I know.
It's hard to dislike him. That's the point.
So anyway, I'm glad it was Ryan McMahon's senior day yesterday, so he's out. By the way, which brings up the question, Wednesday night against Clemson is Virginia Tech's senior night, right?
Yes.
Do they have any
for Brandon
seniors?
Johnson?
Brandon Johnson.
Yeah. Transfer from Alabama
State.
State.
6 games this year, maybe.
So, Chris, you have a good memory for this kind of stuff. Was it Buzz's first year when
Will Johnston and
Shane,
who was the big man? Christian Byer.
What was Shane's? I'm blanking.
Oh, Shane Henry.
Shane Henry kissed the court?
No, it was Buzz's second year. Shane was a Buzz recruit.
Okay.
So he was a junior. He was a JUCO.
Yeah.
So he was a junior in Buzz's first year and a senior in Buzz's second year.
Did Buzz have any seniors his first year?
Yes. Will Johnston and Christian Byer.
Okay, and Byer.
Yep. And maybe, I don't know, there might have been one other guy. It's hard to remember because players were in and out the door. Remember Van Zegeren got kicked off the team halfway through the season.
Yeah. He went to Northwestern, right?
He did.
Yes, he did. Yeah. So that little known thing, and Will Johnston played that year with a pretty bad injury.
Well, remember he got criticized for passing up the last second 3-pointer in that 2-point loss against UVA, and this guy had a hole in his elbow, and I'm not.
You saw a picture.
I saw a picture of it.
I never saw it.
It was disgusting. I don't know how he was playing. I mean, it was basically like he got a cut like right here, and it got infected, and
giant ulcer.
Yeah, it just kept getting bigger and bigger, and for those of you watching, it was something right. It was right there, right on his elbow, and it was probably like that big, and it was just a big open wound, and it was absolutely the most disgusting thing I've ever seen.
And this was not public knowledge. He
was
was wearing an elbow
a
pad.
sleeve over it. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and it's not public knowledge. People are like, well, why isn't Will Johnson shooting better? Well, because he's got a giant hole on the shooting
open
elbow.
sore on his
We're
elbow.
lucky he's even playing at all.
And so Buzz had mad respect for him.
Oh God, Buzz! There's a mural outside the team locker room in Castle, and there's 3 guys on there that Buzz wanted on the wall as representative of Virginia Tech's culture, and it was Zach Leday, Seth Allen, and Will Johnston.
Yeah.
It's a great story. I hope that he got that.
It's one of those things
here,
you can,
cringing thinking about that.
It's one of those things you can't really unsee once you see it.
Can you vividly see it right now in your head?
Yes, I can.
Oh, yeah.
I have one question before we look ahead to this next week for men's basketball. Tyrese Radford, 33 minutes yesterday, flirts with a double-double again, 8 points, 9 rebounds. Is he the most valuable player for Virginia Tech right now?
If Virginia Tech had to play an elimination game tomorrow, I think this is how you answer this question. If Virginia Tech had to play an elimination game tomorrow, and you could pick 5 Virginia Tech players to start or to play against 5 for another team.
No bench players.
No bench players. Just pick 5 Virginia Tech players. He'd be the first one I'd pick. Or no. Let's rephrase that. Let's say you pick one player on the team that you can't do without for that elimination game. The guy that you have to play.
Or you could pick the 5. Sounds like a fun game.
Okay, the 5.
Tyrese Radford, Jalen Cone.
Mm-hmm. Oh, God. I mean, which PJ Horn's going to show up? The one that goes 1-7, or the guy that can drop 18?
Or the guy that drops a bunch of threes against UVA?
It's so hard to do. But I think Tyrese Radford is definitely the most valuable guy.
I would actually, Hunter Couture would actually be one of my 5.
Mm-hmm.
I'm putting Beatty in there because 5 rebounds passing him. I know he's not going to score, but you've got so many scores in that.
Oh, you know how many? God, that guy would have had 8 or 9 assists against UVA if anybody could shoot. The ball moves better when he's in the game, for sure. The offense runs better.
Yep.
For sure.
I thought Tech's ball movement against Louisville at times was very good.
Right. People want to play Jalen Cone more. I agree. Jalen Cone's minutes shouldn't necessarily come from Beatty's minutes. I think Cone is better when Beatty's in there with him because Cone is an off guard. I think Nolly's minutes need to go to a guy like Cone and Couture, probably guys who can play within the system. You can run Cone off screens and things like that.
With the energy that Cone has to play with, you said 27 minutes yesterday.
Yes.
I'm not sure he needs to be playing more than that.
I agree. His 27 minutes are a lot different than other people's 27 minutes because he's just asked to sprint from one end of the court to the other and run off screens and everything like that.
Yeah.
That's him doing that is like somebody else playing 35 or 36 regular minutes.
27 of Virginia Tech's 52 points yesterday came from guys who could be high school seniors.
Yep.
In Naheem Aline and Jalen Cone.
Yep.
So, looking ahead to the final week of the regular season, Virginia Tech is home against Clemson on Wednesday, and then they take a trip to South Bend on Saturday against a surging Notre Dame Irish program.
Yep.
Until they lost to Wake Forest, right?
Oh, you're right. They did. I'm sorry. I missed that.
I didn't realize
they were surging.
They were surging. Like I looked at that game and I clicked on it and I was like, I wonder what Notre Dame's record is. 18-11.
At one point, they were 5th in the ACC. Or was that NC State? I was just shocked
how NC State.
I was shocked how high up in the ACC standings Notre Dame was.
What should we make of this final week? What are you guys? Again, aside from the whole wins and losses, what do you want to see from Virginia Tech basketball in the next 2 games?
I don't think we can. I think they are what they are at this point.
I got it for you. Let me throw the glasses on here. I printed this out. We got to make use of this. I did this research last night. So what's killing them is losses in close games. So if I printed out all the games that Tech had decided by 10 points or less. Okay, so they started out 6-0 in games that were decided by 10 points or less. They won at Clemson, beat Michigan State, Chattanooga and VMI were less than 10 points. One at Syracuse by 4, and one at Wake by 10. And they were 6-0 in 10-point games or less. Then they lost the home game to Syracuse by 2 points. Then they beat UNC by 2 points. And at that point, they're 7-1 in these games. And since then, they are 1-5. Mm-hmm. And the 1 is a 10-point win over Pitt. It's not really a close game.
Right.
5-point loss at BC, 10-point loss at Miami, 4-point loss at home against BC, which was overtime.
Yep.
The 3 overtime loss to Miami by 7 points, Virginia. And then the 3-point loss to UVA.
Yeah.
So just what is Virginia Tech's record now? Is it 15-14?
Yeah.
Yeah. You just reverse 2 of those, and you're 17-12, and you feel a lot better. 18-11.
Right, and then you reverse Michigan State, which Tech probably shouldn't have won. Let's face it. And I mean, I think what we're seeing now is not really freshmen hitting the wall. It's more regression to the mean. Well, this is what we were supposed to be.
So the way it plays out is overall they're 8-6 in games decided by 10 points or fewer.
Right.
It is grammatically correct to say fewer.
That is correct.
And then the ACC tournament is next week in Greensboro, and
day trip.
I will ask. I'm going to ask you this question because I am sure it will be asked. And let's go ahead and talk about it now.
Are you going? No, I'm just kidding.
Tech's guaranteed to play on Tuesday now, by the way.
Correct.
Right.
But anyway, the first day of the ACC tournament. The question is, can Virginia Tech still make the NIT? And do you want them to play postseason basketball?
If they made the NIT, I'd want them to play postseason basketball. Yep. Anything lower than that, I don't really see the point.
Yeah.
I went over the numbers in my Friday Q&A because somebody asked about the CBI. West Virginia accepted a bid to the CBI last year with a losing record, and somebody else did it about 6 years ago. But over the last 6 years, only 2 Power 5 teams have gone to the CBI. You got to pay an entry fee, and going out there and playing Longwood in the CBI is not going to make Virginia Tech better. It's just not.
I think most teams that play in the CBI actually do it at a loss.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. And it's
financial loss.
It's not a money thing. It's at this point you only continue if the players are 100% bought in and they have enough knowledge to where they can move forward. Sometimes guys just need a mental break and need to go on vacation before they can improve, and I think this team has reached that point.
I would agree with that. If the option is the CBI, I would say no.
Absolutely
let's
not.
Just and Mike Young might feel differently. The only guy I think could benefit from more time right now is probably John Ogiaco.
Sure. Well, depends on who they're playing. Like if he's playing against Longwood's 6'6" center, I don't think that'll help him that much.
I don't know.
Who knows?
He get to practice his post moves.
Yeah.
And his shot blocking.
So against PJ Horn?
What?
In practice? I mean, just saying.
Well,
he's another reason Tech needs to get bigger is so he can practice against more height. Ogiaco. Yeah, I mean, he's practicing against Kive Aluma right now, but there needs to be more of that.
Yep.
All right, let's transition from basketball. We've got just about 20 minutes left on the podcast, so I want to do a whip around of other winter and spring sports, and then we'll get to your questions on Facebook Live. Okay, let's start with women's basketball. They wrapped up their regular season on Sunday in Louisville with a loss to, I think, they're the best team in the ACC, no question, in Louisville. But I think they pick up one of their biggest wins of the year Thursday against Duke, who I think has the ACC Player of the Year. If I had to vote, I'd vote for Haley Gorecki. They beat Duke by double digits. It looked like they might win by 20 at one point. So Virginia Tech is the 5 seed. They just missed out on that double bye.
Because they lost at home to a bad UVA team. Sorry. We should be celebrating.
I haven't studied the tiebreakers, but I think from a record standpoint, that extra win would have put them up in the top 4.
So that is the highest seed any Virginia Tech women's basketball seed has ever had.
Well, they've never won more than 6 ACC games in a year, so that's like a quantum leap ahead.
How many did they end up winning? 12?
They end up 11-7?
They end up going, let me see. They end up finishing on the year. Give me 2 seconds. I want to say it was 21-8 and 11-7 in the conference.
Man, that's almost double their. And let's throw the UVA comment in there. They could have had double their wins. So as the 5 seed, who do you play?
So they're going to get on Thursday, March 5th. Their tournament starts on Wednesday, so it's Wednesday through Sunday.
And where is it?
It's in Greensboro.
Greensboro.
So the tournament starts in 2 days, as we record on this Monday morning. Virginia Tech, the 5 seed, will get the winner of game number 1, which is number 12 North Carolina versus number 13 Wake Forest.
Okay.
That is at 11 a.m. on Thursday, March 5th.
Yikes.
Kenny Brooks is taking some criticism from myself and others for certain parts of his program. Their consistency levels. They blew so many leads early last season. I think they should have gone to the NCAA tournament last year.
Yeah.
They blew a ton of leads early last season and started out something like
0-7, but then they finished 6-10.
Correct, right. Losing to UVA at home when UVA's only won 11 games or something like that.
And they
just
coughed up
shouldn't
a
happen.
huge lead that they had over Syracuse. I think they were beating Syracuse by 16 late in the
So
third.
there's a trend of blowing big leads and just not playing consistent basketball. But at the same time, you can't deny that the program has improved substantially.
And Elizabeth Kitley is a building block big
Right.
time.
Well, and I think that she has made the case to win ACC Freshman of the Year. Here are the numbers that Elizabeth Kitley, Tech's freshman center, who I believe was a McDonald's All-American, coming into Virginia Tech. Her numbers right now at the end of the season, she 12.4 points per game. That's third amongst ACC freshmen. 7.6 rebounds per game, second amongst ACC freshmen. 56% field goal percentage, first amongst ACC freshmen, and 2.1 blocks per game, first among ACC freshmen.
So the women ahead of her in the points and rebounds are any of them the same person? Does that question make sense? Like,
That part I don't know. That was just a tweet that Virginia Tech put
Okay,
out. I can try
okay,
and find
so-
those numbers.
Don't worry about it.
yeah, you don't have
but
to do the research.
But
certainly seems to be the most consistent.
Yeah.
and so Tosh
And the
Cole,
most
the
well-rounded.
graduate student who's come in, has been incredible. I think taking a deeper dive, I think this is you could look at it and say yes. The last season they should have. Reagan McGarity and Taylor Emery were two terrific players, but Kenny Brooks now has his people in the program, and you look at the recruiting class he signed for next year. I think the trajectory right now, despite a couple hiccups and the loss to UVA, and they shot 57% against Tech. I think that was just one of those games where, it's not very often you have a player score 32 points and Asia Shepard.
Well, they scored
8
86
threes.
points, and so
And they averaged 61
and
coming
we're talking
into
about
that game.
UVA here. So,
But the Syracuse one was a tough one. But I tell you what, I think if they beat North Carolina in the regular season twice, always hard to beat a team 3 times. And then if they win that on Thursday, they get number 4 Florida State. So that would be the 4-5 matchup on Friday. So that's what's going on with women's basketball. And I think you could make the argument as well. I think Kenny Brooks is in the running for ACC Coach of the Year this year.
so looking down the road, does he have a point guard coming in?
Yes, they do. There's this transfer. I believe she's a point guard. Don't quote me on this. There's a point guard coming in from Australia who apparently is really good.
Okay.
And they still have Dare Mabry coming back, who's really a more of a 2 guard.
Yeah,
than
you
a
don't really
1.
want Mabry running the point.
But last year she ran the point.
Yeah.
And then they've got Shepard. They bring a lot back next year. So
Okay. So Shepard is coming back, did you say?
yes, Shepard, Mabry, Baptiste, Kitley.
Has Rivers got another year?
Rivers is leaving. She's a senior graduate student. But they have a lot coming back. They do. Okay. I think I'm missing one more important piece. All right, let's transition now to wrestling. Big week for Virginia Tech wrestling. They were off last week. They completed the regular season when they wrestled on February 22nd against Pittsburgh. March 8th, this coming Sunday, is the ACC tournament. And despite going 2-3, they have a chance, if they wrestle their best on Sunday, to win ACC tournament championship.
Do they usually do the ACC championship on a Sunday?
I think last year it was on a Saturday.
Yeah.
In Blacksburg.
In Blacksburg, yeah. And I think it's broadcast on the ACC network. So,
Correct.
yeah.
Talk about a program, speaking of close losses.
Yeah.
I mean, when Virginia Tech lost to NC State, they lost that match because one guy lost with 3 seconds left in the third round, and another guy lost with like 20 seconds left in the third round.
Yeah, there's a thing in wrestling, with the 3 periods, how do you close out the first and second period? If you're scoring, if you're getting a takedown like in the last 10 seconds, I totally agree. Watching them this year, and who was it that they lost to recently, Evan? Where I said it came
Pitt.
down.
right?
Yeah, Hunter Bolin, number 2 versus Pitt's number 9 wrestler. Yep. And if Hunter just reverses that and wins that, then Tech wins the meet.
Now, the good news is Hunter, though, lost that, but he becomes the number 1 ranked wrestler in his weight class. I'm going to try and look this up.
His RPI?
Real quick, not because of his RPI, and I don't want to mistake this, but the number 1 wrestler who's the 2-time defending national champion, I believe, is done for the year, but not because of injury. So give me 2 seconds to look this up. Okay. But at any rate, he now goes from the number 2 to the number 1.
Well, rankings are one thing, but the question is, when it comes to NCAA Wrestling Championships time, where is he going to be seated? Because I don't recall, but I don't think that's done using computers or anything like that. I think that's people doing the seating.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah.
And, it's one thing. Some guys are an easy number 1. Like, that guy's definitely the best in his country, the weight class, right? I don't know if that can be said for that this year. I don't know. I don't follow wrestling nearly as much as you guys do. What was Mackay seated last year?
He was seated 8th, and that was criminal. That was
it was just there was no background. He just had that 1 year of evidence, right?
He redshirted and won a lot when I just thought that he was way underseeded.
So Zahid Valencia is the name of the Arizona State wrestler who has won the last 2 national championships at 184. Arizona State has suspended him due to a failed drug test.
Yikes.
Sheesh.
So that really opens the door at 184, and I think regardless if Hunter's the 1 seed or not, he's going to be a top 3 seed unless something really bad happens this weekend at the ACC tournament. So for Tech wrestling fans, with of course Mackay taking the Olympic red shirt, David McFadden will likely be a top 8 seed, but Hunter Bolin will have a chance, I think, to win a national championship.
Congratulations to Arizona State for sticking by their guns.
Yeah, no kidding.
A lot of people would be real tempted to, make him do some extra running this spring and say, go ahead and win the national championship.
We are meeting and trying to determine his punishment.
Well, and not to mention, they could he's suspended right now. I mean, who knows if he comes back? But that is the official ruling right now.
I think McFadden had a good shot at a national championship coming into the season. I think he was ranked something like 4th, but he's been inconsistent this year. So making a run all the way through the tournament, that would be quite a feat. He's a different 8. If he winds up being an 8 seed in the NCAA championships, that's a different 8 than Mackay was last year.
100% agree with you on that. He has a chance to become Tech's first wrestler to be an All-American in all 4 years.
Really?
Here at Virginia Tech.
Let's also point out that the ACC wrestling this year is like the opposite of men's basketball. It's stronger and deeper than it normally is.
Than it ever has
been.
Like
Pitt is like 13th?
No, 10th.
10th? So there's like 4 top 10 teams right now?
North Carolina, Virginia Tech, Pitt, NC State are all in the top 10.
Right.
Wow.
And the ACC has now become the 2nd best wrestling conference in the country.
Yeah, that's great.
So, quickly, want to transition spring sports before we get to questions. Okay, let's start with baseball, Chris. Sweep of Bryant this weekend. They play on Friday, and they knock off the Bulldogs 15-4. Yesterday, a doubleheader, 7-2 win and 10-2 win.
Great series. Bryant took 2 out of 3 from Tech last year. It's historically a good program. Ryan Fecto, Virginia Tech's pitching coach, used to be their pitching coach.
Yep.
I think he's one of the best in the country. I haven't updated the stats. I haven't looked at the updated stats since before the series. But going into the Bryant series, Virginia Tech's weekend starters had a 0.00 ERA, 1.00, and 1.80. Those are the ERAs of Virginia Tech's 3 weekend starters. So pitching has been excellent so far. Bats finally woke up a little bit against Bryant. So I know those first couple games were disappointing, but it's baseball. Baseball is a marathon and not a sprint.
And the game on Friday, I had the pleasure of calling that with Andrew Wells. We had the glasses closed because it was flurrying during the entire game. It was really an interesting spectacle, to be totally honest.
I drove by the stadium during the game, and I looked over there, and I'm like, wait a sec, Tech's playing a baseball game right now.
So that was the first home series this year, right?
Yes.
Home series. They've had weekday games against Radford and East Tennessee State, but that was the first home series.
When does ACC play start?
This weekend
Soon,
in
right?
Atlanta. I'll be going down there. They take on Georgia Tech. And the Coastal this year, North Carolina, Miami, Georgia Tech, Duke, all ranked in the top 25. Then UVA, the 2015 national champs, were preseason 5th, and then Tech is 6th, and Pittsburgh is 7th, and the Atlantic is just as good.
It's a brutal league in baseball, and I had my first exhilarating ACC network experience last night. I have the ACC network now, so I was able to sit home and watch the game.
Chris is a YouTube TV subscriber now.
Sorry, and I could learn all about tack glasses and things like that. For the
Is that your tweet?
Oh my gosh, what a silly commercial! I mean. Yeah, because I'm going to buy tack glasses because it's so common for me to, accidentally drop my sunglasses under my infantry combat vehicle and then run over them.
Is that what's actually in the commercial?
No, that's what the commercial is.
I'm busy tweeting. I'm not watching the commercials.
It's awful stuff. But anyway, had my first
quote, gonna get a pair of tack glasses to wear when I'm on my Power Fit Elite.
That was the quote commercial. That was that vibrating thing that you stand on that just jiggles your entire body and is supposed to add muscle mass.
So you guys have seen the old 60s fitness machines, right? Where it's got the belt that wraps around you and just shakes.
Oh, yeah.
What in the world?
Some people think the ACC teams are going to add $10 million per team in revenue. I'm not sure they are with this kind of commercials.
That's a lot of pairs of tack glasses being sold.
Oh, man. like that guy got funding and just dumped it all into commercials, and he's not going to sell anything, and there's going to be some investor out there.
He's down
really
in the Cayman Islands right now, man.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, real quick.
Sorry.
No, you're
sorry. Let me make my point. So I watched the ACC network for the first time yesterday, and this is a baseball point, and the baseball scores are scrolling across the bottom line. It's like 14-2 and 16-1. Like even Boston College is beating somebody like 15-1.
Oh, it's 20-1 final.
20-1. I mean, the ACC is a bear in baseball, man. They're just drilling teams.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a very competitive season.
Starting pitching was excellent this weekend again. Anthony Simonelli, that's the name to keep an eye on, a transfer who is right hand. I tell you what, too, Andrew Wells made the point on the broadcast. A lot of scouts were there this weekend.
Really?
In February, late February, early March, a lot of scouts there.
They're not coming to Blacksburg, Virginia in late February unless they're serious about somebody.
They're huddled under blankets with their little radar guns.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, Sunday was nice. It was like 45 and sunny. Actually, it was comfortable baseball weather.
I think Seymour's velocity's improved a little bit this year.
He hit 94 yesterday, I want to say. 93, 94.
Yeah, and he already had the command and the stuff pretty decently. So, and I think I read something before the season that said he was one of the ACC's best 10 prospects, which would have him drafted
across all positions.
Yes.
Okay.
But himself, Chris Gerard, you mentioned he came in this weekend not allowing an earn run. Mm-hmm. And this kid Simonelli, I think last year Tech was missing that final piece to a weekend rotation. Mm-hmm. Simonelli is that guy. He's a really powerful right-hander. He's got a 90, 91, 92 mile an hour fastball.
Y'all get me all worked up now, man. I'm ready for some.
Well, if you like, I don't know how good they'll be at hitting the ball when ACC play starts. I think they're going to be a better team than they were last year. There's no question. But I grew up as a Braves fan with Maddox, Glavine, and Smoltz, so I like good pitching.
Yeah.
Like last season, Tech didn't even make the ACC tournament. I liked last year's team because it was the best ERA in school, in like 30 years.
Since 1984 was the first time Tech has posted a sub-4 ERA.
Incredible. I mean, when I say Tech has one of the best pitching coaches in the country.
And hadn't their ERA in recent years been around 5 something?
Oh, yeah. Tech baseball, generally speaking, Tech baseball has been able to hit, but they can't pitch or play defense. That's generally speaking.
Yeah.
Last year they couldn't hit, but they could pitch. But they couldn't hit last year because they had a lot of youth.
Yeah.
So what you're banking on now is
really good pitching,
hitting to take a next step and be better than it was last year. And you've got good pitching and
their closer Zach Brixey, who had a great year in the Cape Cod League over the summer. It's rumored he's hit triple digits. He's hit 100.
I'm sure they were scouting him. I mean,
yep. Now he only threw about 90, 96, I think yesterday was his first fastball. But it's cold. It's early in the year.
Yeah.
So, anyways, all right, quickly because we are running a little bit behind schedule. Lacrosse 8-7 win. The only Tech team to get a win in Louisville, Kentucky this weekend was Lacrosse 8-7. Virginia Tech Lacrosse is off to a great start right now. They are 6-1 with an overtime loss to JMU. Now 1-0 in conference. They've won 5 in a row. And softball is 16-4. They go 4-1 on the weekend at the Jacksonville, North Florida Spring Break Challenge. 2 wins against Purdue, a team with double-digit wins coming into the weekend. They did drop a close one to North Florida, 3-2, an upset, but I think that was one of those games that will fire everybody up.
Well, if you can go win 80% of your games every week,
you're going to be all right.
You're going to be all right at the end of the season.
Where are they ranked right now?
19th and 20th in 2 different polls. New polls come out either today or tomorrow.
And It must be fun to be a softball player because, like, unlike everybody else at Virginia Tech, you get to spend most of the month of February and early March in the state of Florida.
Yeah. This week, Appalachian State on Wednesday. That'll be a decent midweek game. And then UVA this weekend. They were swept by Clemson this weekend. Startup program that's recruited well.
Clemson should be good in softball. Clemson should be good in anything.
Yep.
Right.
And then over spring break, they've got a trip to D.C. and the Northern Virginia, George Washington, George Mason. And then next Friday is their first home series against North Carolina State.
So that UVA series is at UVA.
Correct.
Okay.
In Charlottesville. And they just opened up a brand new softball facility for things in their Olympic sports. Brand new. So Tech will get to help break in their stadium and ACC play. Okay. We've done a whip around of sports. That means we're going to step aside for a break. And when we come back, time to get your questions here to end the Tech Sideline Podcast, brought to you by the Fisher Law Firm. Welcome back in. Tech Sideline Podcast, episode 122, recording on Monday morning, March 2nd. Glad you're with us. Malcolm Stewart, Will Stewart, Chris Coleman, Evan Hughes with you. Time now to close out the podcast with Facebook Live questions, but with the twist. Will Stewart, you have a question for Facebook.
So as we wait for more questions from Facebook Live, I will ask Facebook Live a question. So I was been listening to Sirius XM 30 on 30, and they're playing the top 1,000 country songs of all time. Now I'm not a big country music guy. I mean, I like country music. I don't listen to it regularly though. So I will ask Facebook Live, what do you think is the top? What do you think they named the top country song of all time? And if you want to double down on that challenge, what was number 2? I think if you had asked me that, I actually might have been able to guess them.
So there's so many songs that you can actually name a top 1,000.
Well,
and then you narrow it down. How do you narrow it down to what's the best?
And so,
who votes on that?
And here's and there's never any discussion of how they did it. They just run down the list.
Right.
And when you start getting into the top 25 or top 50, most of the list makes sense, but most of it doesn't make sense. Like one of my favorite country songs is "What Was I Thinking" by Dierks Bentley.
No doubt.
It's like number 650 something.
Is it really?
Meanwhile, song number 56 is some song I've never heard before.
I went to a Dierks Bentley concert one time.
Did you really?
Yeah, and it was in Salem. Miranda Lambert opened for him, actually.
Wow.
It was between his second and his third album. So "What Was I Thinking" was a huge song. So he does his whole concert, and he leaves before he plays that song just to tease everybody. Like everybody, he's like, "Concert's over, see you later," and everybody's like, "What the heck?" And then like 5 minutes later, he comes back out, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I forgot it. Y'all probably came to hear this song."
I want to take a crack at number 1.
Okay.
I'm thinking in the top 5, Country Roads.
By John Denver?
Yeah.
Don't know. I haven't listened to all 1,000 songs.
Oh, I didn't know if they had the top.
Now actually, I know what I downloaded the spreadsheet off Reddit, so I haven't really gone through it in any detail yet, but I'll check and see if that's
okay. I'm curious.
There are several Ray Charles songs on there.
Huh?
No kidding.
Okay. But so that I don't know. I do not think that was top 5 though.
I'd be curious. I'm not a huge country guy either, but I would.
So any
Sweet Home
any
Alabama,
guesses,
maybe?
Malcolm, or are people snoring?
Yeah, let's turn it over to Malcolm. What's going on,
I believe
Malcolm?
Malcolm is snoring.
Put him on the couch.
I'm working on it. George Jones, He Stopped Loving Her Today.
That's way up there. I don't know where it is, but it's way up there. It's not one of the. Do you know the story behind that song, Evan?
No.
I've only heard it once or twice, but it's basically it's George Jones.
Yeah.
George Jones singing "He Stopped Loving Her Today," and he sings about how this guy has loved this woman all his life. And at the end of the song, you find out that the reason he stopped loving her is that he died. He had to die. And I remember George Jones talking
That's a good song.
George Jones talking about the song, and he was saying, you know, they're trying to get me to do this song, and he's like, I don't want to do this song. It's too sad. But it is one of the top country songs of all time. But that's a good guess. That one's way up there. Think more contemporary.
John Houchins says David Allen Coe, You Never Even Knew My Name.
That's a good song.
You know, that one's up there. Is that the song? I think that's the song where I think he breaks at the end and says, "Oh, whoever wrote this for me," he said, I told him it's a great he said it's the greatest country song ever, and I told him no, it's not, because it doesn't.
It's more about
it doesn't mention your mom
being drunk, and
your truck,
and his mom got run over by a train at the end of the
song. So his last verse is something like, "I was drunk the day my mom got out of prison.
That was it. Yeah, exactly.
And I was driving my truck to pick her up, and she got run over by a train."
Yeah.
All right.
Good choice.
Garth Brooks, Friends in Low Places.
That's got to be
that
up
is
there.
number one.
Is it really?
It is number one. Makes sense. So who guessed that? That was good.
Eric Crocker got it first, and then Sherry Overstreet commented right after.
Nice. Well done. So
Any questions over there, Malcolm? I like this
we're
country
just going to
music.
talk about
yeah.
country music.
I'm cool with talking country music. I think Sweet Home Alabama maybe in the top 10.
I hate that song.
What?
That's a rock song, though.
Really? I would classify that as country.
All right, I will look for it.
But it does have guitar.
Was Johnny Cash part of that?
Oh yeah.
What's Johnny Cash? God's Gonna Cut You Down, right? Before Enter Sandman at Lane Stadium.
Yeah. Of course, Johnny Cash. I think he had a song in the top 5. Folsom Prison Blues was way up there, but it was not number 2. So we're still searching for number 2.
The Boy Named Sue.
Yeah. No, that was on there.
That was one of your bios at one point. Wasn't it? A boy named Sue.
All right. Any Virginia Tech sports questions?
Yeah. Well, we've got a podcast question from Eric Fisher.
Okay.
What guests might we see in the coming weeks?
That is great. I was about to talk about this. I don't
Eric
know,
Fisher.
I do not know if this is going to happen in the coming weeks, but didn't we ask for guest suggestions on Twitter?
We did.
I don't know. Did we?
We did, and Jeb Burton, NASCAR driver Jeb Burton,
Raised his hand emoji.
did the raise his hand emoji on Twitter. So we kind of looked at each other like, really? So he indicated, he wants to come on the podcast, and let's see, Chris and I were talking about this weekend, and he's like, "What do you think? Clark Rulin knows Jeb?" So I DM Clark on Twitter, and I'm like, "You know Jeb Burton?" And Clark's like, "Yeah." And I said, "Ask him if he really wants to be on our podcast." Clark answered within like 30 seconds. He says yes, he really does.
For those who don't know who Jeb Burton is, he is Ward Burton's son.
Yes. So let's fill it in.
Yeah.
Jeb races on the Xfinity series.
Right. Jeb from Southside Virginia, like me, is a Virginia Tech fan.
South Boston.
Yeah. So it would be a good. That's the connection. We're not just bringing a random NASCAR driver on the show. We're bringing a NASCAR driver who's a Virginia Tech fan.
Yeah.
Who has driven the Virginia Tech car before.
So I don't know Zip. So he has driven a Tech car.
I'm pretty sure he has, yeah.
So there'll actually be all kinds of stuff to talk about, but I don't follow NASCAR. So I'm looking him up and I'm researching it, and he's in the Xfinity series, which is the quote unquote minor leagues.
Well,
it's the second
I remember
level.
when it was the Winston Cup and the Busch Series. And now I don't even know what the number 1 series is.
It's just called the NASCAR Cup Series is the top level.
Okay.
The top 43 drivers.
They race on Sundays, and then the Xfinity Series races on Saturdays. It's generally about 2/3 the length of the Sunday race. They're a lot of fun. I've been to plenty of those races, or a few of those races before.
So
fun to go to.
Jeb is 27. So Malcolm, this will ring a bell with you. Jeb is Ward Burton's son, and Ward used to drive the number 22 Caterpillar car.
That's right.
Back in the day. When Malcolm was a little guy, we had like a plastic version of the Caterpillar car, and then we also had a little die-cast one that we probably got out of a cereal box or something. Mm-hmm. So in 2002, in February 2002, when Malcolm was barely 3 years old, Ward won the Daytona 500.
That was one of my favorite moments is when I used to be a NASCAR fan. Ward finished first. Elliott Sadler finished second. It was all Southside Virginia top 2.
You were a Sadler fan, right? So Ward wins the Daytona 500 in the Caterpillar race car, and I'm looking at Malcolm. I'm going, Ward Burton just won the Daytona 500, and he's 3. He doesn't know what that means.
Come on, Malcolm.
So anyway,
he was busy contemplating his future AAU basketball career.
That's right. He's practicing sitting in a chair.
I think we need a Malcolm story at the end of every podcast.
So we're not saying that Jeb Burton's going to be on the podcast soon, because they are in the middle of their season, of course, and actually they just started their season a couple weeks ago, and their season will last until November.
Yeah,
but that's a possibility at some point along the line. The conversations have been had.
So I now have Jeb Burton's phone number, which I rank right up there. Like if you go back in the time machine, the day that Ward won the Daytona 500 and say his son is going to be on your podcast one day. That goes along with the time machine story about watching Radford High School play when I was in 10th grade and Mike Young being on the floor playing for Radford.
It's funny.
All right.
So anyway, any questions and we can wrap this thing up?
Yeah. A couple more guesses for the number 2 spot. Jeffrey Lovelace, Dolly Parton, I Will Always Love You.
No, but that was way up there. Yep.
And Scott Crawford, Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain, Willie Nelson.
No. So since we're getting to the end of the podcast, I will tell you number 2 was Crazy by Patsy Cline, which makes sense. That is...
I'm not sure I know that.
Well,
I don't know who that is.
I'm not going to sing it for you.
Okay.
Crazy is iconic, and she also had a song I really like called I Go Out Walking After Midnight. That's an outstanding song. Yeah.
All right. John Houchins. Question: Kenny Brooks' future, having a good year but contract not yet renewed. Will it be renewed? Same terms / compensation.
Yeah.
He has one more year on it, right?
It's
Next
2,
year,
actually.
2. Okay.
2. They signed him, I think, to a 6-year deal, and he's just finishing his 4th year, so he's got 2 years left. I originally thought, they're paying him $600,000. It's a lot of money for a women's basketball coach, and I think maybe it was when they first hired him. But now, based on what little research I've done, it seems like the going rate for ACC women's basketball coaches. So if that's the standard, then I think Tech is probably getting a pretty good deal. Now that said, I don't know Virginia Tech's future numbers. I don't know that that's a sport. Now I will say that Virginia Tech, they seem to be continually losing more and more money in women's basketball. They're paying more for coaching, but it's not generating any more revenue. It's just not going to. So you have to be careful exactly how much money you put into it. But yeah, I mean, if Kenny Brooks wanted to re-sign tomorrow for his current contract, I think that's fine. Sure. I mean, based on what everybody else is paying their women's basketball coaches.
So it's and I haven't put a lot of thought in this. This is off the top of my head. It's an interesting dance. Bob Kaka's athletic director is looking at the program, and expenses are going up gradually every year, and revenue's not really going up.
It actually dropped in the most recent financial report.
Yeah. So, and I do not believe, and this is no insult to Kenny or his family or anything like that, but I don't believe at this point in his Virginia Tech career that other schools are beating the door down to hire him. So what do you do if you're Witt? Although I do think, they're going to the tournament this year.
Yeah, he's improved the program, for sure.
So the program appears to be on an upward trajectory. Evan, I know you like the recruits they got coming in. So I think one possible outcome to this is everybody just kind of stands pat, that you sign a piece of paper and it extends his contract. But I don't think you're going to see him getting a pay raise to $800,000 a year or anything like that.
Yeah.
Now, if Witt was Jim Weaver, he'd probably play hardball and try to get him to take a pay cut. I just think that's the way Weaver would have rolled on it. So I think you might see at the end of the year a 1 or 2 year extension to get him out to 3 or 4 years and kind of see what happens from here on out. But I don't think more money will be involved.
Yeah.
That's my take.
Mine too.
So anything else?
I believe that's it.
Okay.
There you have
it. Up.
And here's some news at the end of the podcast. I always check Twitter and see if there's any breaking news or any Hokie news. Judge Judy's going off the air after 25 seasons. That's your breaking news on Twitter here in the podcast.
Oh, wow. No kidding.
I've watched very little Judge Judy.
Yeah. It'll end after the 2020-21 season.
I try to watch it because it's funny, and I'll get 5 or 10 minutes in, and I just can't stand the people on it.
I've sat at like at an airport bar and watched an episode or two, and I'm like, that's a pretty funny show, and then I never watch it again until I'm at an airport bar again.
That show is perfect for an airport bar.
That's trending on Twitter, as well as Wendy's Breakfast, which debuted today. So
right, I got some coupons for that. And my daughter works at Wendy's. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Did she?
Not for breakfast. Not yet, anyway.
All right, that'll do it. Episode 122 of the Tech Sideline Podcast. A reminder to follow us on social media. We're at Tech Sideline on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can stay up to date with everything going on TSL on our social media pages. If you're watching this video on YouTube, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button. It means a lot to us, and we'd really appreciate it. All right, any closing thoughts, gentlemen, before we sign off?
Nope.
My usual. Let's get to work.
Let's get to work. All right, that'll do it for episode 122. For the best producer in the land, he is Malcolm Stewart. On our podcast set, our managing editor, Chris Coleman, our founder and general manager, Will Stewart, our podcast host, Evan Hughes, saying so long. Thanks so much for listening. This has been episode 122 of the Tech Sideline Podcast, brought to you by the Fisher Law Firm.